Welcome to GC Sidebar, a short and sharp conversation series with leading general counsels about the decisions, the reflections, and the people behind the title. I'm Trista Engel, CEO of Paragon Legal, and today I'm joined by Rishi Varma, Chief Legal and Ethics and Compliance Officer at Cargill, one of the world's largest privately held food and agricultural companies. Rishi is a four-time general counsel who balances leading legal for a critical global food company while raising 3 kids and maintaining a deep commitment to equal justice, work that was recently recognized with the 2025 Scales of Justice Award. Rishi, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Let's jump right in.
Sure, let's do it.
What is one thing you're most focused on for 2026 and why?
We live in this world of accelerated uncertainty and complexity, and it's not gotten any easier for the legal profession because the world is that much harder to navigate. I think a lot of the sort of inflection points between technology and talent, and what I'm really focused on is kind of building up that strategic talent in my department where we can focus on delivering the solutions for our business without having to search for all of the answers. And so what do I mean by that? I want us to be thinking about AI-enabled solutions to help us eliminate the search for data and then allow our teams, our talent, to be the creative insight generators that we've hired them to be. So I sort of think of it as combining our human ingenuity with our AI precision. And I'm focused on building that structure throughout our ecosystem this year.
That sounds really interesting. How are you doing that?
So on the AI-enabled side, we are partnering with companies to sort of help build what I call our brain, build our better brain. And we're trying to do it where we think about what does Cargill know? And shouldn't we be able to leverage the 160 years of history of risk tolerance, risk calibration, how we've entered into agreements, how we've negotiated those. The challenge is we often don't think about our own history. We think about what's immediately in front of us, and that's what we negotiate. But if we had a language model that learned all about how Cargill accepts and tolerates risk, and then you could use that engine to understand how to negotiate things, you'd be a much better legal professional, you'd be a much better attorney. And I think it helps us think about where institutional knowledge really resides. So we're building the AI infrastructure to do that.
Yeah, I love hearing the way you're thinking about that because you hear so much about AI and the pressure that legal teams are under to adopt and implement AI. And the challenge they often face in that implementation is on the data and the people. And it sounds like your approach is addressing the data and the people first so that you can actually leverage the tools and the data and the people to get to the right outcomes.
That's much better said than I did, but I like it. Yeah.
What's the most valuable lesson you've learned as a GC?
Among the many valuable lessons, I think that the single most valuable one that I've learned is you don't have to know everything. It's not about knowing everything. It's about knowing how to process the uncertainty around you. And for me, the lesson I learned was sort of, how do you slow things down to move faster? How do you unpack a very complicated issue into this sort of bite-sized questions that will help you get to a place where you can start to piece together a set of facts, a set of situations, or some level of data that you can then piece together for a recommendation. And then also know that you need to rely on people around you. COVID was a great example of the most uncertain time for the entire world. And yet a lot of legal departments were being asked questions like, is it safe to go back to the office? How should we proceed? What happens when people get together and somebody's sick? Those weren't things that we learned in law school, but we learned how to navigate uncertainty. And so for me, it was kind of knowing that you don't have to know everything, but how do you slow things down to move faster?
Yeah, that's great advice. And, we keep talking about how we're living in continuously unprecedented times. I mean, there's no certainty or precedent for a lot of what we're dealing with these days, and figuring out how to make the right decisions and how to leverage the people around you is great advice. What's one career moment that changed your trajectory?
When I was at Hewlett Packard at the time, we were deciding to separate the company into 2 large companies. At the time, the largest corporate separation, $110 billion company splitting into 2, And I had very little awareness about what this process would entail. But I knew that somebody needed to lead the legal portions of this initiative. So I raised my hand and I said, I want to lead how we do this on the legal side. And I learned more about myself in terms of how to manage large groups of people that are not all lawyers, how to solve problems, every day, but how to also articulate amongst multiple audiences, the very granular audience of the working group to the very high level audience of the board meeting. And you learn along the way what your audiences need to hear and what matters most in those moments, so that it just ingrained in me a skill set of knowing your audience and better understanding how to solve those problems.
That's a great story. And there's so much in there that you could unpack. One, raising your hand to do something you've never done before, which is always really hard. Two, getting exposure to so much across the business that you might not get exposure to if you had just stayed in your role and stayed in legal, which becomes all the more important as you rise through an organization to have that, holistic business lens. And then the third thing I heard you say was about the communication and learning how to communicate with different people, getting the message right in a way that's going to land, communicating in a way that your audience is going to hear. Those are all incredible lessons and opportunities that you might not have had if you hadn't raised your hand.
No, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. We touched a little bit on the people side of things. GCs today have such a wide range of resourcing options beyond just FTs and outside counsel. What's your approach to resourcing your legal team?
For the longest time, I thought about where can we get the lowest cost model to expand our resources, but allow us to continue to stay within a certain budget as we deliver solutions for the business. I'm now thinking differently. I now think about how can we create an infinite number of solutions that will eliminate capacity constraints altogether. So if you think about that first question about what am I most focused about today, I think a lot about our technology roadmap within the law department and where do we have places that we can automate, places that we can eliminate pain points within the organization, and areas that we can do things on a more routinized basis that will accelerate the amount of time my team has to do the more strategic work. So I look at capacity constraints as an opportunity to expand my tech stack more than anything else to see where we can solve for some of those capacity problems. But that said, it's not a blind spot. I am well aware that there are always going to be opportunities where we do need to augment the existing amount of resources, and whether that's short period of time, long transaction, or just an elevated amount of risk that the company needs to mitigate, I will look to the market. We'll look for talented resources where we need them, and we're surgical about where we place those resources. And oftentimes it can mean different jurisdictions require different levels of skill sets that we don't already have in our resource pool today. But first thing I look at is kind of how do we reduce this capacity constraint through technology solutions. Second way I think about it is if that's unavoidable and it really is a person, where in the world do we need that person? What else can that person do?
That's a really great framing. Thanks. When you're not lawyering, where are you most likely to be found?
Oftentimes my wife and I travel a lot. I've traveled a lot throughout my career for business, but over the last 5+ years have learned to do that on a more, even if it is for business, let's travel together. Let's do some fun things together along the way or thereafter. So my wife and I travel quite a bit around the world. We have 3 children. Our oldest lives in Hong Kong today. So we find ourselves in Asia a little bit more frequently than we thought we would. Other than that, I love a good meal, and, spending hours around a dinner table with good friends is a fun way to spend my time. And then if not, you'll find me playing squash with our 2 daughters.
Oh,
Who both play in college. And while I taught them how to play, it's a struggle to get them back on the court with me because I'm too slow now. So that it is fun. It's a good workout for me, and it's good. It's fun for me to see how much better they are than I ever was.
yes. The student becomes the teacher.
Yes, very much so.
I imagine it's hard to keep up, but that's amazing. Good for them and good for you. And the bonus question, Paragon turns 20 this year. What's one memory from 20 years ago that still stands out to you?
Well, first of all, congratulations on the anniversary. That's a huge milestone. So 20 years ago, We were in a situation, I think our kids would have been 5, 3, and 1. So my wife and I were playing a lot of defense. But my favorite memories of those days were sort of the weekends where we would all get together, like we would come together in our bedroom and watch a movie with them in their sleeping bags or, in the bed with us. And it was kind of a fun family evening, and we would show them old movies or watch, movies that they're interested in. I'm sure the 1-year-old doesn't remember anything at that point, but it just, good family time, the kinds of things that, as your kids grow so quickly, you miss those moments. But yeah, at that point, 20 years ago, it was a lot of family time.
Yeah, well, that's a nice reminder for those of us who are still in that phase. My kids are 8, 6, and 2. And last weekend, we watched Cool Runnings, which is another 20 plus years ago.
Some great Jamaican bobsled team.
Great family movie. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's awesome.
Well, that was super fun, Rishi. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for sharing your journey.
You are welcome. Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
All right, that's a wrap on today's episode of GC Sidebar. Catch more great conversations on our website at paragonlegal.com. Thanks for tuning in.